Hey everybody, and welcome back to Nerdium, the show where two grown men take a break from being two responsible adults our partners have grown to love, and instead turn our attention from the mundane hustle and bustle of reality to the important things like comics, video games, TVs, and movies. Now, far be it Matt and I not to celebrate one of the funnest and possibly scariest times of the year. In the last episode, we spoke of all things zombie. Now Matt and I delve into the world of slashers. Which movies made our list? Do we really enjoy watching the innocent get slaughtered with every knife in the kitchen or power tool in the shed? And can you really spell slaughter without laughter? So join Matt and I as we answer these all-important questions, while we decide whether or not we really should go upstairs and investigate the sounds coming from the rooms. Now, Matt, when you're ready, just grab a flashlight and I guess grab a baseball bat and hit the theme music. Maybe we should have a peek.
Alright, so we're moving on to volume 2 of our Halloween countdown, and this episode will be all about the slasher genre.
I mean, what's a Halloween without a slasher movie, or a dozen?
Well, you get a slasher movie literally called Halloween, but...
Yeah.
So as we all know, kind of the slasher genre was kind of jump-started during the John Carpenter era.
Like late 70s, early 80s, sort of envelope-pushing years.
When you kind of start seeing more of like the make-out lane and teenagers having sex kind of more on the big screen. Like you don't see that too much in the 50s and 60s, but in the 70s you start seeing that kind of...
Well, the hot and steamy action you got in the 50s and 60s were things like holding hands. And dirty talk was, how are you doing?
Yeah. So what does society do to remedy that? They go, if you go down to make-out lane and start having sex with your teenage girlfriend or boyfriend, there's going to be a man with a hook for a hand or a big kitchen knife. You know,
it's weird. I never really caught on to that trope for like the longest time until somebody pointed it out. It never really, like, just as like a young kid, like I never put the sex and drugs into the get hacked up into pieces by a maniacal killer. Yeah. Never put that two together, so I don't know if it was really worth the effort to try and scare me like that.
Well, you made it through all right, so either you weren't having sex and drugs or it's not true.
Or I wasn't having good sex or doing good drugs. It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to hit you with a few survival tips if you ever find yourself in a slasher scenario. So I have 3 here that I kind of jotted down.
Sure.
First one is don't go back into the house.
Good advice to follow. Keep going.
Yeah. No sex on Friday the 13th, full moon, or on Halloween.
Seems like a buzzkill. I mean, solid advice.
If you're in a slasher movie.
It just seems like I could, it's just a lot more fun, but okay, I get it.
Yeah, like, what are the chances that would actually happen these days in the real world? But I'm just saying, if you're in a slasher movie.
Okay.
Also, don't go into the woods alone.
Typically, yeah. I mean, that's good advice anytime, but yeah, no. Especially if you're in a slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
So some of mine are always look in the back seat.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Never just dive into your car while you're playing jingly keys in a panic. Just feel free to look into the back seat. There is never a need to go to the basement.
Ever.
You can ignore that noise and keep on going, or just leave.
Yeah, that's probably the furnace. You don't need to go check it out.
Nobody cares. Right? There's nothing that important. And it's kind of like a follow-up, kind of like a 2 subsection B portion. What was that noise? Don't know, don't care, why bother looking at it? It's just that noise wasn't, it was a cat, it was a hamster, it was whatever. It doesn't need you to walk into the darkened room and not turn on the light.
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Yeah, you're not going to solve the mystery at middle of the night anyway. So.
You're not a detective. There's no need to go into that noise.
Yeah.
Just go.
Yeah, fair enough.
So there you go. Hopefully that will help anybody living in a slasher movie.
Yeah, it seems most of them are kind of common sensey, except for my no sex on Friday the 13th one. But yeah.
Well, that's just buzzkill is what that is. But the rest of them are very common sensey.
All right, so we have chosen a few really good slash movies that you should check out. Add to your watch list before Halloween or on Halloween.
Absolutely.
For me, I did kind of like a wide spectrum of them, like kind of cast a wide net. So my first one I'm going to go with is actually Black Christmas. Not the remake, not any of the spin-offs. It's going to be the original, the 1974 one.
which almost made my list, but at the very last minute, I'm like, I'll find something else.
Yeah, thank God it did, because we did not plan that out, and we would have been both talking about it.
Yeah. See, this is what happens when you do all your research in advance and then just absolutely don't spend time talking to the other person.
This is true. All right, so this is kind of one of the first slasher movies for the genre, and it's kind of the precursor to Halloween. So it kind of set up a lot of the slasher / horror tropes that get used for the next 40 years.
It's still going, basically.
Yeah. So it's starring Margot Kidder from... You all recognize her from Superman.
Yeah.
For Lois Lane. Yeah. It's inspired by the babysitter and the man upstairs urban legend. So it's kind of like...
Is that not the urban legend of the call is coming from inside the house?
Yeah, so gotcha. It really kind of falls into that little thing. It's also kind of loosely based on a series of murders that took place in the West Mount section of Montreal.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Pays to do some research.
Yeah, well, apparently, la-di-da.
It was filmed in the University of Toronto. And like you said, it started the killers calling from inside the house gimmick. So that kind of comes back a bunch of times. You see it later on in Scream. I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is pretty much like Scream again.
Didn't Scream came out before I Know What You Did, right?
Yeah, Scream came out first, and then I think it was I Know What You Did, and then like Scream 2. And
yeah, I remember seeing them all in theaters when they first came out, but I couldn't remember the order that they were released.
I caught I Know What You Did 2 on one of those old movie networks the other day, and it did not age well.
But they don't. They don't. The teenage romps of my childhood have not boded well with time.
Yeah. So Black Christmas also uses kind of the holiday-themed exploitation method when they're making horror movies. So you get like the Halloween kind of holiday ones, you get the Christmas holiday ones, you get all those kind of things, and it kind of exploits kind of the holiday time. So that's kind of uses as the kind of the backdrop or the kind of flavor of the movie a little bit.
Yeah, almost kind of like corrupting something that we all hold a little bit more near and dear.
And also a lot of these slasher movies in the 70s were used to kind of debate social topics. So that's why you get the teenage sex, the drugs, the alcohol. It kind of opens up a dialogue about it, where previous generations were a little bit more conservative, didn't bring it up. In the 70s, you start seeing that a lot more. So actually in Black Christmas, there's a little bit about feminism, alcoholism, all kinds of different social issues that are going on at that time. And it kind of brings those issues kind of to the forefront. So it's kind of an interesting use of a social platform at that time. Mm-hmm. And it also led the legacy of slasher films and was eventually remade in 2006. I haven't seen the remake, though.
I never bothered to see it. We were talking about this before we started recording, that I think the most of the items on our list here are all like the originals. The remakes, either because the originals had such an effect when we were younger, and you go back and you see the remake and you're a little bit older, you're a little bit more aware. Maybe that's part of the reason we prefer the originals, but still, they never really hit home.
No. All right, so that's Black Christmas.
Okay, yeah, cool. So the first on my list is probably one of my favorites, and it kind of opened up the door to again another movie that really started a lot of the tropes in the slasher genre, and that is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
So it was written and directed by Tobe Hooper. It was made on a budget of anywhere from like $80,000 to $140,000, depending on where you look at. Mm-hmm. Really not well shot, real gritty. Not a lot of well-known actors or actresses at the time. But the return for that investment was about $31 million.
Yikes.
And it was also banned in 7 countries.
Fair enough.
Which is, I mean, I don't blame them. It's not exactly a pleasant film, not by that day's standards. It's definitely not as gory as the modern retelling of Chainsaw Massacre. And it's definitely no Saw or any of the umpteenth sequels that have popped up. Mm-hmm. But for the time, it was actually quite edgy with blood, gore, and then just over-the-top violence. And it kind of follows a group of 5 friends that are going to a cemetery because Sally, with the main character, and her brother, who's in a wheelchair, they have a grandfather interned in the cemery. They just want to make sure his tombstone's okay, because I guess there was a lot of vandalism.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of dwells onto like a hitchhiker plot. You know, pick up a hitchhiker who's just batshit crazy.
Yep.
You know, they end up kicking him out of the van. In contrast to the remake, the hitchhiker they pick up is actually a girl that was victimized by Leatherface and his family.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the remake that she shoots herself in the van, isn't it?
I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the remake.
Yeah, it really, really blurs the line. I know in the original, the hitchhiker they pick up is actually Leatherface's insane brother. So, but it also goes through like all your typical horror movie tropes, but it really, really starts to lean on the blood and the gore. You know, the idea, the one scene where you see Sally being picked up by Leatherface and just impaled on a meat hook, so she could watch one of her friends get cut up by Leatherface and more or less prepared to be served for the family dinner.
They use that meat hook a lot in that series. I remember seeing it a couple times.
Yeah, because it was such a weird and iconic scene at the time, I think in the original you don't see the meat hook actually puncture her skin, but you do see her go up, and eventually you see the meat hook sticking out. You never actually see it pierce. Although a lot of people swear Black and Blue they have. I don't think you see it in the original. But it was one of the first movies that starts to add things like power tools to the weapons of torture and maiming. It was obviously you have Leatherface running around with a chainsaw for the titular name of the movie, but then there's things like power drills and hammers and just the worst items to hurt yourself with. You know, and in the end, it's the typical the damsel in distress inevitably escapes barely with her life, and spoiler alert: Leatherface lives. The very last scene is him basically having a like freak out that she got away, and almost like this romantic love dance with his chainsaw as he's dancing around the freeway,
just swinging around,
just carrying on like a madman. And this spawned like a number of sequels that got more and more ridiculous as the years got on. It went from a serious blood, guts, and gore and terrifying movie to a parody of itself. I think it's in Massacre number 3. You have Dennis Hopper. That's just this comic sheriff. Like, it's just. I remember watching it. I was so disappointed because I thought it would be a continuation of a scary movie, but it wasn't. It was more of a farce than what it really was.
Yeah, I remember that. Was it the second or third one where it has Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger?
I want to say number 2.
Yeah.
I want to say number 2.
Went a long way from not having any kind of big name. Well, I guess they weren't big name back then, though.
Well, no. I mean, look at, was it Johnny Depp with the very first Elm Street?
Was it?
Or was he in Friday the 13th?
Oh.
He was in one or the other. No, I thought it was Elm Street, where he's the one that gets sucked into the bed, and then the geyser of blood shoots up to the ceiling.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah. But I mean, these are all like late 70s, early 80s, so these big name stars that we see now on the screen, these are when they were going through their teenage roles. They were just young kids at the time with really very little acting experience one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But that is my first pick for slasher and hacky and choppy and all that sort of good stuff.
That's a pretty solid first pick.
Yeah.
All right, so my second pick is the movie that we kind of all grew up with, is Scream from 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Scream was there's a lot of mixed kind of feelings on Scream.
I love Scream until I'm about halfway through it, and then I'm kind of tired of it.
Yeah. It was directed by horror icon Wes Craven, and it combined a lot of the dark humor and mystery and slasher violence into one movie. I think it modernized the genre that was popular in the 70s and 80s and brought it into kind of the 90s, kind of brought it into like a more kind of current thing.
Looking back on it with my rose-color nostalgia glasses, I remember watching it. I think it's a good look at where the 90s were, kind of like for soundtrack, for style. It was, I think that's a good analogy. It's a modern, for that time, a modern retelling of the slasher tale.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because even in the movie, they kind of bring up a lot of other slasher movies and other kinds of things. Like, so they're in a world where slasher movies exist and the slasher movies we know of exist. And so they're actually discussed in the movie. However, people still go into the basement or still go into the house alone. And
well, I remember watching the previews for Scream, and it was almost the way the previews were played. It almost gave you an impression that it was kind of a comedy. Like there was a couple of scenes where they're basically, oh, don't go downstairs. Like they were making fun of the idea of going downstairs.
Yeah.
You know, and when I went to see it, it was not half as funny as the previews made me believe it might be.
No, there was some dark humor in it, but ultimately, it was pretty decent kind of slasher movie. It was inspired by the real life case of the Gainesville Ripper. So a lot of the kind of elements that they used in the movie was actually taken from a real life situation. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. Seems like my other pick had that too.
You got a trend going on there, man.
Yeah, I hope the next one doesn't have it. Anyways, its legacy kind of spun off into multiple sequels, TV series, and then eventually inspired the comedy series named after its original script title, which was supposed to be Scary Movie. Mm-hmm. So that's when you get the Scary Movie, like, I don't know what it is, like Scary Movie 7 now.
Are they up to? I know they've made 1 billion of the different movies. There was Date Movie, Hero Movie, but Scary Movie I think is like their most ongoing series.
Yeah, it's like Scary Movie. I don't know what it is, but I know there's like Charlie Sheen and Lindsay Lohan in it, so it's doing well.
It was the breakout role for Anna Faris.
It's true, and she's doing really well for herself now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so that runs off my Scary Movie.
So my final pick is one, and just like Chainsaw Massacre, it had its own modern day remake. But I always like to stick to the original. So mine is the 1980 Prom Night with Jamie Lee Curtis.
All right.
And it was filmed in Toronto, and it is a Canadian-made and produced slasher flick. Directed by Paul Lynch of fame, of which I couldn't tell you because I didn't go that far in my research. And it is similar to Black Christmas, only instead of being in a sorority house, the killer is inside of the school during prom.
Okay.
I've always wondered about this. Did you have your high school had a prom?
Yeah.
Did you have a prom in the gymnasium?
We had like a big auditorium.
Did you? Oh, okay. I never went to a school that had a prom inside of the school. It was always like held elsewhere, like a banquet hall or something. It was always weird to see a movie with a prom in the school. That's all.
Okay.
That is just me delving into one bullet point that I was curious about.
Yeah.
But basically, it is the typical trope of something happened X amount of years ago, and now there is a killer on the loose that almost appears as though he's avenging something.
Okay.
So in this one, it's Jamie Lee Curtis's sister. 6 years ago, Jamie Lee Curtis and all of her friends are basically playing hide and seek in somewhere they're not supposed to be playing. And her sister shows up, and way too young. It's the typical, you're too young to play these games, get out of here, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, the sister dies, falls out the window or some damn thing. And as the girl dies, you kind of see like the typical shot of a shadow falling over the girl. Police are out and about. They end up arresting a previously known rapist, and they pin the murder on him. And then 6 years later, the anniversary of the young girl's death happens to be prom night. Okay. Why the hell not? Let's have all the planets line up all at once. And the story is basically just weird things starting to happen around the school, and they all kind of coalesce into prom night where bodies are being found, they're hacked up to pieces, there's a head rolling here, there's body parts flying in there. And then in the end, just like a lot of movies, it's always, she knew the killer the whole time. And in this case, it is Jamie Lee Curtis's brother, Alex, that turns out he was going to avenge everybody's death. which I don't quite get because you kind of got to ask yourself, was he going to kill Jamie Lee Curtis at the end? Because killer's after her too. Like, there's a few times where she's close to death because it just wouldn't be a good suspense movie if she wasn't. So it's kind of a weird plot hole there. But it's got all the tropes that you could imagine for in a slasher movie. It's got the don't have sex or else he's going to chop you up. Don't do the drugs or else you're going to get chopped up. And all that swimming around, just the typical teen angst, hormones bouncing off all over the walls. Side note, though, Leslie Nielsen plays a serious role as the principal.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen Leslie Nielsen in like a dozen actual serious roles from when he first started acting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to see that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, no matter how hard I try, seeing Leslie, I'm waiting for him to just, like, throw out some weird punchline for no particular reason.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, he plays Jamie Lee Curtis's father, who's also the principal for the school. But it is not a groundbreaking slasher flick by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
However, it is a good slasher flick. Like, I think the 80s and late 70s kind of hit their stride there with slasher flicks. You know, we were no longer afraid to show a little bit more violence on the movie screen.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of getting into that age where makeup and prostheses and all that sort of good stuff were getting really good, where we could really start showing some more graphic detail, much to the chagrin of any ratings board at the time.
Yeah.
Not that there were a lot of big ratings boards in the early 80s. But it definitely kind of kicked off a need for one, that's for sure. And like I said, this had a remake in 2008, of which I, just on principle, refused to see. But again, it flopped really, really hard. It didn't do half as good as the 1980s version.
Okay.
When you factor in how much the 1980s version, just like Chainsaw Massacre, how much it cost to make and how much it brought in, it seems the remakes cost 100 times more to make and barely break even when they do.
Yeah.
It is kind of a cautionary tale for anybody that's looking to continue on the remake bandwagon there. Some movies you just can't bottle that lightning up and open it up later on again.
Yeah, exactly. The shock factor's done.
It is, but also, you know, the thing about the slasher flicks in the 70s and 80s is that it was a shock to the system. Like, people had never seen that before.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we kind of focus on the big jump scares. Slasher flicks aren't really the thing to go see for the most part. But I don't... Yeah. But then again, like, you know, you got a movie like Saw that's pretty much just an out-and-out gore fest.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of jump scares necessarily in that one. Mostly just gory scenes.
Yeah, it's just body terror is what... Don't get me wrong, I've seen all the Saw movies in theater, and I love to see them in theater. It's just...
I saw Saw 1. That was about it.
Yeah.
I feel like I saw all the Saws by seeing Saw 1.
I think if you see the first and second one, you've pretty much seen everything you need to see, and then after that, you're just a weirdo going to see people chopped up.
Yeah, it's kind of like Fast and the Furious, where you see one, and then if you jump all the way to the last one, you're like, what happened?
Yeah, I feel like tapping out after the first Fast and the Furious was good enough for me. I'm good on it. So anyway, that is my final pick for our slasher flicks.
All right, so I'm just going to mention my last one. It's not really a favorite movie of mine, but I just kind of like what the movie is, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's House of a Thousand Corpses from 2003.
You know, the first time I saw that, I barely made it through all the way.
Yeah?
Yeah, just something about it got under my skin when I watched it the first time. It just creeped me right out.
It does have a really strong creepy factor, and a lot of people have a hard time sitting through it. And like I said, it's not one of my favorite movies, but I kind of like what it did, though.
Yeah.
So it's on my list because it was Rob Zombie's directorial debut, and it brought him into the horror genre. And so it eventually gave him something to work with that brought us the Halloween movies that we enjoyed. Yeah,
I should think so. I mean, it gave him the legitimacy, I guess, to do the Halloween remakes,
mm-hmm.
which, I mean, I enjoyed, but they weren't particularly received very well.
No.
But what I remember watching, like I said, really, really creepy. A lot of weird imagery in that. It's really a get in your head and mess around movie.
Yeah, so he's really good at not just throwing gore on the screen. He does like a lot of the psychological stuff too. Like he takes the gore and puts it in the back of your mind where you didn't know it was going to be, and it keeps popping up later on. It's almost like you have PTSD from watching his movie somewhat.
It's almost like he's scratching at you. He just happens to pick a really weird scab you didn't even know you had.
Yeah.
It just really gets into your brain and messes around in there.
Yeah. So it was influenced by some of the other favorite, like kind of classic horror movies that we enjoyed. Kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes kind of thing. Probably even like Wrong Turn, all that kind of stuff. So like the kind of hillbilly kind of murder stuff.
Yeah, the weird hillbilly inbred out in the hills, away from civilization sort of group.
Mm-hmm. So it's known for its gory, brutal mess that it kind of brings to the screen. It's not necessarily a scary movie, but it's a disturbing movie. It eventually spun out the sequel, The Devil's Rejects.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was almost like identical, same kind of like it was. I would say identical. I'd say it seemed like it had more of a plot direction than the first movie.
I found, like, to me, I was super disappointed.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's maybe House of a Thousand Corpses just managed to hit all those right beats that just kind of did what it did to me and really creeped me out.
Okay.
And then when Devil's Rejects came around, I thought, here I am. I'm going to have the exact same experience because this is going to be amazing. And I was let down, but I think maybe because I was hoping for that initial experience, and I never ever got it. But you're right, it was a lot more plot-driven and centric on the characters.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that he was told that he could have a second movie, but he had to ease up on the pedal of the gore and kind of actually have a plot where the first one I don't really remember the plot too well from the first one, but I remember it was more of like there could have been a plot, but I think I was more surprised by all the gore that was going on. Yeah,
it kind of hit the beats of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in where everybody shows up at Spalding's gas station or whatever the hell it was, the like House of Horrors, and then it kind of it was the typical we're all just gonna hang out here, but then nothing is what it seems, and things just go haywire. But the Devil's Rejects is basically, from what I remember, the three of them, Spalding, Rob Zombie's wife, I can't remember her name. Sharon. And the other crazy brother/brother-in-law, they're just basically running amok and being... It was basically a movie about three villains, from what I remember. I haven't watched it in ages and ages and ages.
I can't remember the actor's name, but he was actually in one or two of the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, and Zombie uses him in like most of his movies.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think A Thousand Corpses is like a solid like backup pick.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, it's not like a scary movie, but it's definitely one that really creeps into your skin and just really gets your skin crawl. Like I would recommend it. Just turn the lights down and just try and sit through it. Like, to me, the only reason I sat through it is because my friends were in the same room. If I got up and walked away, I would have been ridiculed. So
yeah,
it really creeped me out.
Yeah, I think if you like movies like Texas Chainsaw or like the Saw movies with the gore, I think that might be a movie you'd like to kind of check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely one on my recommended list.
All right. Okay, so that's going to wrap up this this episode's genre of horror classics that we recommend that you check out before Halloween or on Halloween.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be coming at you with another episode as we count down till Halloween. And
what do you feel about Halloween anyway? Is that one of your like go-to holidays for like craziness?
It used to be. With young kids, it's kind of difficult to do that, but I think
it never like rung a bell with me. Like, I mean, when I was a kid, like going out trick-or-treating and going to the parties, to be sure, but
yeah.
Outside of like looking forward to basically back-to-back Simpsons Halloween episodes.
Yeah, Treehouse of Horror.
Yeah. And really just Fear Fest on AMC. I don't know. I'm not really a Halloween guy.
Yeah, that's actually like pretty much what I look forward to is all of October you get the movie channels and all that doing the countdowns, and you get all the classic horror movies, and it's kind of like the little bit of spooky nostalgia that you enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, like for me, I'm a fiend for Christmas, but I could give or take the Christmas movies.
Yeah,
I have a couple that I really like, but aside from that, it's like, meh, I don't really care.
I have maybe one that I have to watch, but
Yeah, exactly. But for me, for Halloween, it's the exact opposite. I could care less about Halloween, but I love what goes on entertainment-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So,
All right.
there you go.
Well, here we go. Here you go, everybody. Carrie hates Halloween. You heard it.
Don't remember that. Don't think I phrased it that way, but okay, we can go with that. Hashtag Carrie hates Halloween. Why not?
Oh, that's going to trend. That's trending. All right. So, next time, guys.
Everybody have fun.